With a powerful kick, the door was blasted open. Police immediately stormed inside and apprehended a Chinese woman on the spot. She was identified as the central suspect in an exceptionally large-scale money laundering operation. According to investigation records, this woman only had a college education and a physical disability. However, she is still believed to have illegally mobilized over 40 billion yuan, which is approximately 140,000 billion Vietnamese dong from China before quickly fleeing abroad. After leaving China, this woman began a life of luxury, hiding in expensive rented houses. Each month her rent alone amounted to 160,000 yuan, nearly 500 million dong. Not stopping there, she continuously traveled between many European countries, splurging on shopping and spending without any restraint, notably just as she was preparing to finalize transactions for luxury real estate purchases. This series of unusual financial activities caught the attention of UK authorities. This led to a large-scale pursuit. Behind the image of a woman who spent money endlessly were nearly 130,000 victims. Those who have suffered and are still suffering severe consequences. That woman is Qian Jimian, a figure referred to by the financial world as the Bitcoin Queen. Welcome back to True Crime Cases. I am Vo Nam. In the early morning of April 22, 2024, armed British police simultaneously raided a rural bed and breakfast in Yorkshire and arrested a Chinese woman. On the scene, the middle-aged woman sat stunned and disoriented. According to authorities, this was the suspect they had been tracking for 6 years in connection with a money laundering case described as the largest in British history. Qian Jimian was also identified as an international fugitive involved in causing approximately 128,000 people in China to lose all their savings. The total amount allegedly defrauded reached 43 billion yuan, about 150,000 billion dong. After this money was converted to Bitcoin, she fled to the UK. At 46, Qian Jimian continued to be dubbed the Bitcoin Queen by the media, not only for holding a vast amount of cryptocurrency but also for once harboring ambitions of building her own nation. Qian Jimian was born in September 1978 in Rugao, Jiangsu Province. Public information about this woman is scarce. She was married and divorced, completed college and joined multi-level marketing networks quite early. In 2012, she used the alias Li He to register in Hong Kong an organization named GBS International Group. The name would mislead investors into believing it was affiliated with the Swiss GBS Group. According to investigation data, this was the starting point of a deliberately staged scam, where the brand name was used to build trust and attract funds. Under the guise of GBS International, Qian Jimian launched an investment project, oil exploration in Hefei, Anhui Province. At the same time, she claimed to own 60,000 mu of raw material land. This creates the impression of a large-scale project with a solid foundation. However, the operational model relies on a recruitment mechanism, commission-based rewards and tiered profit sharing. From this, a closed-loop multi-level marketing network gradually took shape, simultaneously providing her with initial capital. Then, after the affair was exposed, the network was immediately investigated and dismantled. Yet as the key links were successively apprehended, Qian Jimian managed to slip away into obscurity. This indicates she always had an escape route prepared and rarely found herself in a precarious position. By mid-2014, amidst financial P2P consultations promising consistently high returns, while risks were rarely mentioned, Qian Jimian proceeded to establish a new model. In March of the same year, she founded Tianjin Blue Sky Electronic Technology Company in Tianjin. With a registered capital of 30 million yuan, approximately 100 billion Vietnamese dong. This company was introduced as operating in high-tech fields such as chip research, smart elderly care and Bitcoin mining. However, according to the investigation, these technological ventures served merely as a smokescreen, while the true objective remained capital mobilization from investors. After establishing the operational framework, Qian Jimian began recruiting sales teams, with promises of high commissions targeting middle-aged individuals and the elderly with accumulated savings. These investors were invited to upscale hotels, attend seminars and banquets. And after the dazzling introductions, they were presented with investment packages painted as life-changing opportunities. On stage, Qian Jimian appeared as Wati, her face veiled, seated in a wheelchair with photography strictly prohibited. She claimed to be a descendant of high-ranking officials, a graduate of Tsinghua University, holding 2 doctoral degrees and having been a financial expert studying in the US. All this was conveyed through slideshows and one-sided presentations. According to investigation records, the image of a disabled yet successful individual was used as a tool to enhance persuasiveness. Concurrently, claims of bringing cutting-edge technology back to the country for national benefit were interwoven to build the facade of a technology enterprise capable of sustainable profitability. Not stopping there, Qian Jimin was also accused of creating projects under the guise of collaboration with state agencies, while hiring individuals to pose as blockchain experts to bolster investor confidence. Alongside these promotional claims was the financial bait. Short-term investment products were advertised with minimum annual returns of 45%, with some packages reaching up to 100% or 300% coupled with daily payout mechanisms. Investors of 6 million yuan or more, approximately over 20 billion Vietnamese dong, were also promised lifelong profit sharing. From there, the network continued to expand through the model of recruitment and tiered commissions. Many individuals not only invested their own money but also introduced acquaintances to join, despite not understanding Bitcoin or blockchain, simply believing that their deposited funds would quickly generate returns. In Tianjin, a Bitcoin island mine was even set up for investors to visit. However, according to the investigation, most of the equipment was merely for show, designed to create the illusion of genuine operation. From that moment on, the process of defrauding investors and seizing their funds officially began. During the period from 2014 to 2017, this simple yet coercive operational model rapidly spread across many provinces and cities. The company continuously expanded its network of agents nationwide, while frequently organizing conferences attended by thousands of people. At the same time, a slogan was repeatedly chanted at a gathering: "Give Janui 3 years and Janui will grant you 3 lifetimes of prosperity." In the initial phase, many investors actually received returns amidst the chanting and adulation of the crowd. The Flower Sister was gradually elevated to a near-idol status. In just a few years, the Blue Sky Janui system attracted over 43 billion yuan from the public, equivalent to approximately 150 trillion Vietnamese dong, with around 128,000 investors participating. On average, each person invested over 300,000 yuan, nearly 1 billion dong. Among them, many invested their entire savings and even their retirement funds. However, by the end of 2016, as a series of P2P platforms in China began to collapse, ominous signs gradually emerged. In 2017, the system cited an upgrade as the reason for halting profit payments to investors. As time passed, more and more people realized something was wrong. Police in many localities continuously received complaints, while the media began to report on the issue. By April of that year, the Tianjin Public Security Bureau officially launched an investigation into the company. Ren Zhongtao, the nominal legal representative, was apprehended, marking the moment the case officially broke open. However, by then the ill-gotten gains had completely vanished. As the mastermind behind the entire system, she understood perfectly that it was all a facade. Therefore, from the outset, she had prepared an exit strategy. Her appearance with a veiled face was not just for image but also to conceal her identity. Her real name did not appear in any public events or documents. The sole legal representative of the company was Ren Zhongtao. However, according to the investigation, he was actually just a hired figurehead to bear the legal brunt. Qian Jimin promised Ren Zhongtao a monthly salary of 30,000 yuan, approximately 100 million dong, with an additional bonus of 1 million yuan after 3 years, roughly 3.5 billion dong. In return, he agreed to be the legal representative and the one responsible if anything went wrong. Throughout the operation, whenever the company encountered trouble or attracted the attention of authorities, the issues were often resolved with money. Furthermore, products advertised with elegant names like life bracelets, upon closer inspection, turned out to be cheap electronic devices with negligible technological content. According to the investigation, the total amount illegally raised by Qian Jimin was around 43 billion yuan, equivalent to approximately 150 trillion dong. Of this amount, 3.41 billion yuan, approximately 120,000 billion Vietnamese dongs, was used to repay early investors. To sustain the model, 300 million yuan, about 1,000 billion Vietnamese dongs, was allocated for company operations, while the remainder was spent on personal expenses such as purchasing real estate, luxury cars, and high-end goods. Concurrently, the investor began to gradually transfer funds out of the banking system. A total of 11.4 billion yuan, approximately 40,000 billion Vietnamese dongs, from both corporate and personal accounts was used to purchase Bitcoin, equivalent to about 70,000 Bitcoins, which were then dispersed into numerous overseas e-wallets. In this manner, the flow of funds was virtually removed from oversight, rendering it impossible to freeze or trace, while simultaneously paving the way for an escape plan. When the new investor pays, the old investor model completely collapsed. Everything rapidly spiraled out of control. The investor only needed to carry a laptop to abscond. On July 26, 2017, the investor illegally crossed the border into Myanmar, where she lay low for a period before using the funds to purchase a Myanmar passport to travel to Thailand. In September 2017, the investor spent 250,000 United States dollars to acquire citizenship of the island nation of St. Kitts and Nevis through its citizenship by investment program. She adopted a new identity as Zhang Yadi, altering her birth year to 1990. And presenting herself as a businesswoman from North America. St. Kitts and Nevis is a small island nation in the Caribbean with a population of just over 40,000 000. By contributing to the Sustainable Development Fund, foreign nationals can obtain a passport and enjoy visa-free travel to over 150 countries as the nation is part of the Commonwealth. With her new passport, the investor sequentially traveled through Laos, Myanmar and arrived in London on September 16, 2017, beginning her life in the UK under the identity of Zhang Yadi. The choice of the UK was not arbitrary. London is a global financial hub, conducive to handling complex financial transactions. Furthermore, at that time the legal regulations concerning cryptocurrencies still had numerous loopholes. Therefore, immediately upon arriving in the UK, the investor began seeking ways to convert Bitcoin into cash. She rented the presidential suite at the Royal Garden Hotel in Kensington, while minimizing her public appearances. However, due to her limited education and lack of fluency in English, her life in the UK was fraught with considerable challenges. Consequently, the investor began recruiting an assistant through a WeChat group for the Chinese community in London. She presented herself as a successful Chinese entrepreneur, with the sole requirement being that candidates be fluent in both English and Chinese. The primary duties revolved around translation and handling daily living needs. That autumn, a Chinese woman living in London named Jian Wen saw this advertisement and decided to apply. Jian Wen, born in 1981, holds a bachelor's degree and after marrying an Englishman, moved to the UK with her husband in 2007 to reside. However, not long after giving birth to her son, the marriage gradually faded and eventually ended in divorce. From then on, Jian Wen became a single mother and lived in Leeds, West Yorkshire. While her economic conditions were extremely tight and she couldn't afford to raise her child in England, she was forced to send her son back to China. She herself moved to London to find work, eventually becoming a waitress in a restaurant to make ends meet, with the plan to bring her son over once she was more settled. But Jian Wen never expected that it was this encounter with her benefactor that would completely change the trajectory of her life. According to the account in the file, her benefactor asked Jian Wen to come to the Royal Garden Hotel lobby for an interview. There, Jian Wen met a woman elegantly dressed, traveling in a wheelchair, and introducing herself as an international jewelry businesswoman named Zhang Yadi. This person stated that she had limited mobility due to an accident and was currently looking to expand her business operations in the UK, thus needing an assistant to accompany her. The offered salary was £4,000 per month, approximately 130 million Vietnamese dongs, with accommodation and food included. The conversation flowed smoothly and Jian Wen was quickly hired. Not long after, she gradually gained the trust of her benefactor to the extent that most tasks were delegated to her. At that time, her benefactor was believed to hold around 70,000 bitcoins, equivalent to £210 million, approximately 6.5 trillion Vietnamese dongs. If converted accurately, this fortune would be enough for her to spend her entire life. However, in the initial phase, her benefactor still had plenty of cash and did not reveal to Jian Wen the amount of bitcoins she held. Instead, she asked Jian Wen to rent a villa in Hampstead, London, with a monthly rent of £17,000, about 550 million Vietnamese dongs. Then they moved in together. Jian Wen quickly realized that her employer was exceptional, prioritizing information security and asset protection. When looking for a housekeeper, her benefactor explicitly instructed that the hired person must absolutely not take photos inside the house, not record audio or video, not use the home network or connect to external networks. Although Jian Wen sometimes harbored doubts about her employer's true identity, the exceptionally high compensation, which lifted her out of her previous struggling life, led her to continue complying with all of her benefactor's requests. From then on, both maintained a very high standard of living, and whenever cash was short, her benefactor would exchange Bitcoin for money to continue their luxurious lifestyle. Not only that, but she also gifted Jian Wen a luxury car for transportation and bought her many expensive designer items. Concurrently, she brought Jian Wen's son from China to England, enrolled him in a private school, and paid all tuition fees. These actions further solidified Jian Wen's absolute trust in her employer. Starting in October 2017, Jian Wen was arranged to travel to Thailand twice. Initially, her benefactor claimed she was merely collecting jewelry from acquaintances. However, each time she returned, the only items Jian Wen carried were encrypted laptops. When questioned, Tian Triman explained that besides jewelry business, she also engaged in Bitcoin mining, and those computers were used for mining new Bitcoin. From then on, Jian Van began to take on additional roles handling financial transactions. Tian Triman would find buyers for Bitcoin online. Then Jian Van would receive cash through underground channels. With money in hand, the two continued to move constantly across Europe, traveling and spending lavishly. By early 2018, Tian Triman began eyeing a mansion worth over £10 million, approximately 320 billion VND. It was formerly the Italian embassy's headquarters in the UK. All purchase procedures were handled by Jian Van. To avoid revealing her identity, Tian Triman asked Jian Van to be the official buyer, with a plan to transfer ownership back to her after 1 year. At the same time, she wanted to pay with Bitcoin. However, the seller did not accept this payment method, preventing the deal from being completed. Not long after, in March, Tian Triman continued to set her sights on another property priced at £23.5 million, roughly 750 billion Vietnamese dongs. This time they engaged a real estate agency to facilitate the transaction. Around the same time, the UK began tightening its grip on money laundering activities related to Bitcoin. Parliament passed anti-money laundering regulations to curb illicit foreign funds, making the exchange of large amounts of Bitcoin for cash, whether in person or online, subject to strict scrutiny. Despite this, Tien Tri Man still instructed Gian Van to proceed with the property purchase. As this transaction involved high-end real estate, a lawyer was brought in to assist. Initially, everything proceeded relatively smoothly. Gian Van exchanged Bitcoin for £850,000, about 27 billion Vietnamese dongs, and transferred it to the law firm as a deposit. However, at that very moment, the lawyer requested Gian Van to provide proof of the legitimate origin of the funds. In response, she presented a Bitcoin address and explained that the money came from Bitcoin mining activities. Yet when further questioned, Gian Van could not provide clear answers, and her ambiguity immediately caused the law firm to trigger its money laundering alert mechanism and report the incident to the Economic Crime Unit of the Metropolitan Police. From there, the police began investigating Gian Van's background and soon discovered an anomaly. Just a year prior, in her official records, she was a low-income restaurant server. Yet now she was undertaking property transactions worth tens of millions of pounds. This red flag made the money laundering investigation highly probable, thus a covert investigation was swiftly launched. During this period, Gian Van and Tien Khai Man continued to seek other investment opportunities. They had their eyes on a luxury apartment in Dubai for £500,000, approximately 16 billion Vietnamese dongs, and a beachfront house in Italy priced at £1 million, about 32 billion Vietnamese dongs. Yet unbeknownst to them, every journey and expense was meticulously tracked by the British police. Upon amassing sufficient evidence, authorities moved to freeze the £850,000 deposit held at the solicitor's office. Then on October 31, 2018, armed with a warrant, police launched a surprise raid on the house the pair had rented. In the bedroom, they found Jian Ji-min reclining on the bed. When asked her name, the woman curtly replied, Zhang Ya-di. Inside the residence, police seized numerous stacks of cash alongside a vast collection of jewelry, watches, and luxury goods. Jian Ji-min's electronic devices, including a laptop and a USB drive, were also confiscated. Upon examination, they discovered meticulously encrypted cryptocurrency wallets. Before the police, Jian Ji-min consistently portrayed herself as a disabled businesswoman, unfamiliar with English, and adamantly refused to divulge passwords for her devices and crypto wallets. However, at that juncture, the evidence was insufficient to definitively prove all assets were illicit funds. Consequently, the police could not immediately decrypt or initiate prosecution. The passports of both individuals were impounded and they were released on bail pending further investigation. During this period, police continued to meticulously scrutinize their entire background's movements and spending patterns. The investigation spanned several years, and after thorough verification, police determined Zhang Ya's identity to be an alias. The true mastermind behind it all was revealed to be Jian Ji-min, the central figure in this money laundering scheme. Concurrently, authorities had gathered enough evidence to link Jian Wen to money laundering activities. However, just as the police were poised to make an arrest, Jian Ji-min exploited her bail period to abscond. In May 2021, British police apprehended Jian Wen for a second time. At her residence, they discovered a note bearing the inscription, "If they can crack the Bitcoin password, I am done for." Subsequently, Jian Wen confessed to having penned the note herself. This detail underscored her full awareness of the illicit nature of her involvement. Next, police collaborated with a blockchain analytics firm utilizing data from Jian Wen's USB drive to access the Bitcoin wallets controlled by Jian Ji-min. The decryption process was arduous. As the balances appeared on screen, investigators uncovered approximately 61,000 Bitcoins, valued at the time at a staggering £1.4 billion, roughly 45 trillion. This figure signified that they were dealing with the largest cryptocurrency seizure in the history of France and Britain. The blockchain data charting the entire flow of funds in the money laundering network was gradually unraveled as every transaction made by Jian Ji-min left an indelible trace. On March 2, 2023, the Royal Court of Justice in Southwark, London officially commenced the trial. In court, Jian Wen maintained she was merely an assistant and had no clear knowledge of the operations behind the scenes. Her defense counsel portrayed her as a single mother who had been exploited, while before the court, Jian Wen affirmed that he was merely an assistant and was not privy to the behind-the-scenes activities. The defense attorney described her as an exploited single mother, while believed the true mastermind was Tien Khai Man, who was still on the run at the time. A year later, in May 2024, the jury found him guilty of money laundering and sentenced him to 6 years and 8 months in prison. Meanwhile, Tien Khai Man had already been arrested. In February 2024, alerted to Bitcoin transactions linked to Tien Khai Man, the funds were transferred to an account under the name Lam Ton Phuc. This individual was identified as her new assistant during her time on the run. He also took over the role previously held by Gian Van. While on the run, Tien Khai Man not only sought to conceal her whereabouts, but also secretly sought to legitimize her identity in Britain to evade capture. According to the investigation, she once harbored the ambition to use her wealth to establish a nation of her own. From there she would crown herself queen and expect to gain diplomatic immunity, thereby avoiding arrest by any country. At first glance this idea might seem preposterous. However, in reality in Europe there have been instances where legal loopholes could be exploited to achieve similar feats. Specifically in the Balkan regions of Zagrostia and Shapia, numerous disputed territories have persisted, stemming from historical border definitions based on the Danube River. However, during the era of former Yugoslavia the river's course shifted, causing the natural border to move into Gradia's territory. At that time, as both nations were part of Yugoslavia, border issues were not a priority. It was only after the dissolution of Yugoslavia that territorial disputes officially surfaced. Shapia advocated for the new river course as the border for administrative convenience, while Gracia rejected this demarcation, as it would result in further land loss. Conversely, if they reverted to the old border, many areas on the Gracia side would be small, difficult to develop and unsuitable for habitation. Therefore, Gracia also did not recognize them as its territory. From this disagreement, many areas along the border between the two countries emerged as unclaimed territories, considered no-man's lands. Among these, a piece of land west of the new river named Gornja, formerly belonging to Shapia, with an area of approximately 7 square kilometers and primarily wasteland. In 2015, a Shapian citizen named Vit Jelika exploited this legal vacuum to declare the establishment of the Free Republic of Liberland. He proclaimed himself president, designed a national flag and emblem, and declared the nation borderless, allowing free entry and exit. According to his declaration, Liberland uses Bitcoin as its transaction medium, and anyone contributing $10,000 United States dollars could apply for citizenship and receive a passport. This peculiar model of an independent nation quickly garnered attention online. At one point, over 100,000 people submitted online applications for citizenship, and around 1,000 were considered citizens. However, according to published figures, the number of people residing there permanently is no more than 10. No United Nations member state recognizes Liberland as an independent nation. Meanwhile, both Shapia and Gracia have declared non-recognition. Even the self-proclaimed president risks arrest by Gracia police whenever appearing in the area. Therefore, most administrative activities take place online, while this land primarily serves as a destination for photos and sightseeing. This very story is believed to have sparked the idea for the businesswoman to do something similar. While in London, she began planning to replicate this model even on a larger scale. According to records, the businesswoman had considered using funds to purchase Liberland, along with plans to build an airport, hospital, and various commercial facilities with the prepared capital. Not only that, she is also alleged to have intended to spend $5 million, approximately $125 billion, to craft a crown and scepter and organize a grand coronation ceremony to become the Queen of Liberland. However, before the plan could be implemented, reality brought everything to an end. After a long period of surveillance, British police identified the businesswoman's hiding place. On April 18, 2024, authorities discovered her hiding in a remote guesthouse in Yorkshire and immediately organized an arrest. When police broke down the door, the businesswoman was found lying in bed and was apprehended on the spot. According to the report, police asked her to remain in place and confirm her identity. The businesswoman admitted to only speaking limited English. Immediately after, law enforcement announced that she was arrested for violating Article 329 of the Proceeds of Crime Act related to money laundering. During the search, police discovered an encrypted Bitcoin wallet containing assets worth approximately 67 million British pounds, about 2,100 billion. After her arrest, the businesswoman began to assert her innocence, claiming she was merely a victimized cryptocurrency investor. However, when China provided a series of documents including records of the Blue Sky case, Gatorade, along with victim testimonies, her defense was systematically dismantled. As there is no extradition treaty between the UK and China, the businesswoman was tried in the UK. On September 29, 2025, the case was brought to trial at the Southwark Crown Court in London. Chinese investigators traveled to the UK to testify in person, while many victims participated in the trial online. Ultimately, the businesswoman pleaded guilty to 2 charges: possessing criminal property and transferring criminal property. On November 11, 2025, the court sentenced her to 11 years and 8 months in prison, while Lam Ton Phuk was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Legally, the largest money laundering case in judicial history appears to have concluded. However, a larger question remains unanswered: the fate of the seized colossal assets. Because since 2017, the price of Bitcoin has surged, causing the actual value of these assets to fluctuate significantly over time. As of the trial, the 61,000 Bitcoins initially seized by police have surged in value, with an estimated total worth of approximately £5 billion, a staggering 160 trillion. From this, a significant question arises: how will this fortune be handled? And will the British government emerge as the beneficiary of this case? In essence, this sum does not belong to any individual's savings, nor is it the property of Britain. This is the wealth derived from 43 billion yuan, approximately 150 trillion, which 128,000 Chinese victims were defrauded of. However, under Britain's Proceeds of Crime Act, after deducting compensation, any remaining illicit assets are typically forfeited to the state treasury. After tracing the illicit funds, the UK's Crown Prosecution Service once considered establishing an international compensation fund for victims of cryptocurrency scams. This was seen as an unprecedented move. Nevertheless, to date, specific regulations pertaining to this fund have yet to be announced. According to British assessments, determining the legitimate owner of the aforementioned assets is exceedingly difficult, as proving each victim's ownership is nearly impossible. Simultaneously, the process of restitution faces numerous obstacles. In reality, China and Britain have previously engaged in discussions regarding asset repatriation. However, a major hurdle lies in the fact that victims initially invested in yuan, while the seized assets are now bitcoins that have significantly appreciated. Furthermore, cryptocurrency is not recognized as legal tender.